Welcome back! My name is ballerscuba. This is Video Games Over Time! We are still in 1986. Today, we're going to take a look back at the year that was 1986 in a retrospective video. If you haven't seen a video like this before, it's a chance for me really to go off script, just kind of talk about the year as a whole. I have notes in front of me to kind of talk about all the things I want to talk about. We'll talk about behind the scenes. We'll talk about my personal experiences. We'll hear from some patrons. We might hear, I'll give out some kind of pseudo awards for myself at the end of the year. That's basically a chance to kind of just relax a bit and kind of talk about some of the larger things that are kind of going on and things like that. So this is a great background video, second monitor video, stuff like that. So let's just kind of get into it. I always say that I'm going to try to make this fast. This time I really do have to because I'm kind of getting over a cold and I have a cough that will probably start showing up as we continue on. I will cut those out. But if you just see random cuts, that's what happens. The cough just is lingering on far too long. Let's do a little bit behind the scenes to start. The channel, we got up to 5,000 subscribers during our 1986 campaign, so to speak. So that made me happy. It was pretty early on in the year, but I'm still happy to be over 5,000. Some people tend to forget that I'm small. I'm a small channel. This is not my job, right? This is a hobby that I spend quite a bit of time working on, and I don't have any help. It is all me. All the researching, scripting, recording, editing, setting things up, all the YouTube stuff that I need to do, all that I handle. So would love to go faster. Would love to hire an editor. That's honestly my least favorite part, but it doesn't pay a bill. Like, it doesn't pay the internet bill, what I do here. So always nice to see some fans. If you're new this year, great to have you. But it's be nice if there were more so that I could try to spend more time on this and less time doing stuff that actually pays the bills. We hit that. I also got up to more playlists. I added a lot more playlists for everything that we are doing. I did it by year. I did it by company. I did it by series. I did it by platforms. I did it by genre. So it should be easier for people to kind of navigate. I got a couple complaints about that this year. So it was already something that I was planning on doing, but I had a bit of time to be able to handle that this year, so I got those set up. In my personal life, just a few quick things. I am fully out on my own. I have my own business. It's an accounting firm that I do bookkeeping and accounting and payroll for small businesses, especially here in Oregon, but there's a couple outside the state that I work on as well. But that has freed up a little bit more time for me so I can do longer play sessions. You kind of saw that towards the end of the year. I was doing more for like the Bard's Tale 2, where I was sitting there for like 3 hours and you guys got to see like an hour and a half of it. Hopefully I'm a little bit more efficient, or at least the games allow me to be more efficient as time goes on. But that is done. Han and I did get married. This is going up, I believe, on the 30th. We got married on the 5th, October 5th. I would show off the ring, but it's being resized right now, so I don't have it. But we did get married. It was great. I probably will not be sharing pictures because of what's happened in the past when I talked about my personal life a little bit too much. But it was very nice, and we're very happy. But we're also exhausted. We both got sick basically at the wedding. I think we know who brought the sickness, but Han got it first for like a week, and then I got it basically from Han, and it's been about 2.5 weeks for me. But I'll get better. I'm on the upswing already, so things are going to go better there. Fully opened up a cheese shop here in Portland. I believe I've brought that up before, but it's starting to get busier to the point that I'm no longer needed there. We had to, get somebody else to help out, which also will free up a little bit more time for me as we move forward. So I'm hopeful that I'll have more time to dedicate to this because I really do enjoy it. But it's difficult for me to dedicate time to that, when I'm struggling with financial stuff, especially since we just paid for a wedding, right? So that's kind of the personal things. Those are the main ones, at least that come to mind. But with that said, let's kind of go into the topics that we talked about this year. We'll go through kind of the major videos that we talked about and see we'll see what we talk about as I keep going. I usually just try to talk about personal experiences and things like that, but it usually kind of evolves into other things. The first game that we played this year was Akari Warriors. Now, Akari Warriors is a legendary name in the kind of retro gaming space. A lot of that, and when I say that, just know that what I mean is that it was released early for the Nintendo Entertainment System. A lot of games benefited from the timing of that. Akari Warriors is one of them. It's a good game, don't get me wrong, but the way that some people kind of talk about it and things like that, the way that they hype it up, it's not as good as I've been led to believe by those people. So, fun game. Wish I had the rotary joystick that would allow me to do it the traditional way, the way that the game was kind of designed, but I feel that even if I had that, the game would be fun, but not necessarily living up to the hype of kind of the retro community. That was my first time playing the game. I played in the arcade version because that's the original. I do want to point out that I go out of my way to try to play original versions when I can. At least something that is very representative of an original version. Sometimes I'll have to switch like computer systems. But overall, the original is my goal. And some people didn't want me to do the original. They want me to do the one that they grew up with. That happens a lot. And so Akari Warriors is one of them. I played the arcade. NES was the one that people wanted me to play because that's the one that they had. And that's the one that honestly is more popular, but this is the original. So that is what we're going for. So fun game. That was my first time playing it. I didn't have it growing up. Interesting, done fairly well, but doesn't live up to the hype. Next up, a game that does live up to the hype, I believe, and that's The Legend of Zelda, the first one. Great game. I've played it a couple times before. The Legend of Zelda series as a whole, for whatever reason, missed me growing up. I didn't play a single Legend of Zelda game until high school or maybe even college. And even then, it was the original Legend of Zelda because finally somebody talked to me about that series. When I was growing up, I had never really heard of it. I would see it at, spoilers, a rental place all the time, and it just never struck me as a game that I really wanted to play. And that's sad because they're really good games. I don't know why it missed me, but it missed me. So happy to play it. I've played it a couple times. I've done it for the channel before. If you're looking for higher quality gameplay, I believe that the other playthrough that I did was better, but I tried to do something different this time and it just kind of worked out worse. Took different advice and then I kind of got into it and went, oh, that's not what I wanted to have happen. But still a lot of fun. I think it is a game that lives up to the hype. One of the best games of the year. It's obviously a contender for that. It is a great game. It's better than the sum of its parts. And I think that a lot of its parts are established genres, right? You know, looking at like Highlight and Xanadu and other games of that type, you can see how the game kind of developed, but it put it into a package that is greater than any individual part. So Legend of Zelda, great game. Next up, we have The Sentinel. The Sentinel is a game that I had not heard of until I started doing this project, and therefore never played it growing up. Of course I didn't play it, never heard of it until this project. I will say that I got a couple comments from people that are dedicated Sentinel players. There's, I believe, 2 comments. I forget how many comments, but there's definitely a very small niche community that is trying to beat every single puzzle level in the Sentinel. And if you remember, I believe that it was somewhere in the range of 32,000 levels. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I remember it being tens of thousands of puzzles and levels, and people were dedicated to beating every last one of them. People said that it was a great game and that I didn't get to the part where the game starts getting really interesting, which I believe I was told when there are 3 Sentinels that I'm trying to avoid by teleporting everywhere. So maybe the game gets better, but I started getting kind of bored, right? I wasn't going to go through 32,000 levels. That's just not what I wanted from the game. But a lot of people did say that the game was really good, one of their favorites. So, maybe I'm underselling the Sentinel. But for me, it was good. I think that the graphics aged poorly, but that's really a different topic. If the gameplay is good enough to keep you there, then you can have fun beating 32,000 levels, apparently. Next up, we have Wonder Boy. Wonder Boy was a good game. I had heard about it a lot growing up. It's one of those series that you just kind of always hear about, but you never really get into. At least for me, that's the way that it worked. But I was happy to get into it this time. It's a very difficult game, and I feel that I did it pretty good justice. I tried to make it a ways through the game, but the game, I don't know, it just doesn't live up to, once again, the hype that I've been told by retro video game players, and maybe once again that's because it was kind of an early NES title. But the game is good. Maybe the name is good because I know of a song that uses that as well, so it's always in the back of my mind, but that's neither here nor there. Good game. Glad I got to play it. Next up, we have one of the more controversial games that I played this year. That is Spin Dizzy. Spin Dizzy, for those of you that missed it, is kind of like a Marble Madness type game. You have a shape. It starts as a ball. You can also do like a pyramid or a diamond. I forget all the things that you can be. You can change the shape, but it's essentially the same. It's an adventure game, but also a puzzle game. You move around to all these different screens in an isometric perspective in order to collect certain things in a certain amount of time. Controversial because I felt that the movement system of the game was programmed incorrectly. For those of you that missed it again, the idea is that you're like a ball or something. If you hit, let's say left, which we're going to call this way, hit left, it like puts the ball's speed at max speed to start, let's say like 30 miles an hour, whatever. And then as you let go, it kind of slows down and finally stops. If you want to change directions, that's when the problems start. So let's say you're going this way and it's slowing down, but it's not fully stopped yet, and now you want to go that way. If you go that way in real life, you would basically like push it and it would go this way, maybe a little bit at an angle, but not too much. The way that the game works, though, is if you have any momentum still going this way and you hit that way, it goes at a 45-degree angle at max speed. And for me, that was incorrect. That's not how physics works. And so it took me a long time to get used to it, and I felt like I never really got used to how the Sentinel controls. Also controversial, I couldn't get a certain mechanic to work. And that's kind of just part of the experience sometimes with a lot of these old computer games, especially if I can't find a manual or anything like that. There's a mechanic of the game where you can hold a button down. The problem is nobody can agree what button it is. at least in my comment section, where you can basically build up momentum. So you like hold, I think I was told shift by somebody, and you would hold shift and then tap left, and it would build up momentum while staying in place. And then you would let go of shift and it would kind of zoom off. That's my understanding of how that would work. But I couldn't get that to work while I was doing it. And all of the buttons that people told me in the comment section to make that work, I think I was told control, I think I was told shift, I think I was told alt, I think I was told, oh, it's with a joystick. None of those worked when I went back and tested it. So as far as I could tell, the version of my game just wasn't doing that. I tried several other buttons. I think I tried tab and delete and backspace, just spacebar. Well, spacebar is different. That was a different control, right? Nothing seemed to work. So there were aspects of the game that I could not get to function, and therefore I felt bad. But at the end of the day, what I was able to get to function didn't work the way that I anticipated. So I don't think it's deserving of the praise that it got when it was released, which, if you remember right, was over a 9 out of 10. I believe it averaged somewhere like 94, 95 out of 100, including one magazine giving it a perfect score. For me, the core mechanic of the game is movement. For that to not work properly means I can't give it a 9 out of 10. And that's one of the reasons why it was controversial for me. It didn't work for me. Other people still say it was really fun when they were growing up, but most people will admit that coming to it today is rough. All right, so that's Spin Dizzy. I felt like I should address it like, hey, I said it in the video. There's clearly a mechanic I'm not seeing. There was, but I still can't get it to work, knowing that there is something that I'm supposed to be able to do. So I don't know. It just didn't work on mine, and so I don't know. Maybe there was another version that I was supposed to play where you could do it. But if I'm playing a version where it doesn't work at all, then it shouldn't have been sold, but that's a different thing. All right, so next up we have Fantasy Zone. Fantasy Zone's a game that I've heard about a lot. Finally got a chance to play it. Our first cute 'em up, so to speak. Actually, not really. Isn't Twin Bee considered a cute 'em up? Either way, it's a cute 'em up. It's a good game. It's way harder than I imagined. I figured that as I got through the history of shoot 'em ups, I would get better, and Fantasy Zone kind of proved that wrong. Like, no, I'm still terrible at shoot 'em ups. But fun game, really liked it. Finally got to play it. Always happy when I get to do that. Next up is Dark Castle. Dark Castle was the Macintosh platform game. That one was an interesting game. I hadn't heard of it before I started doing this series, and I don't think it aged well. Most platform games are basically at a higher standard now, and Dark Castle felt like I was kind of getting screwed over, and it just required tedious memorization for you to be able to do anything in the game. And since I didn't have it memorized, it felt like it was just a game that I was like, well, let's try this. Well, that doesn't work. What about this? All right, that doesn't work. And so it just became a little bit too frustrating for me to want to continue, but it's not really that long of a game once you figure everything out. So I think it's kind of intentionally made difficult because there's just not a lot there. So you just have to keep practicing the same thing over and over, and that's how you get your money's worth time-wise out of it. Next up, we have Nightmare. Nightmare with a K at the beginning. That one was the scrolling shooter, I believe. I'm just kind of going off my memories here. If it didn't leave a huge impression on my memory, it's probably not the best game. But this one, I do remember not being great. I think we were like a medieval knight walking through like Greek landscapes, vaguely Greek landscapes. So it was good kind of for what it was, but I think for the year, for 1986, I think it was way behind the times. I felt like it felt like a game before the crash, like 81 or 82. That would have been a much more fun game. But considering that we've gone through like Gradius and even like Fantasy Zone and other shooters like that, it felt like a big step back. But because it was on a platform where you didn't see a lot of those types of games, there's a little bit of leniency given to that at the time. But from our perspective, not so much. Next up, we have Solomon's Key. Solomon's Key is a game that I've heard about my whole life. There's once again, retro fandom for the game, but it doesn't necessarily translate to a fun experience in modern times, at least as best as I can tell. I wasn't having a ton of fun with it. It was fun to some extent. It's an interesting puzzle setup. And if you wanted to go a little bit more slowly and really map things out in your mind as you approach each puzzle, then there's a lot of fun to be had with Solomon's Key. But I think there are better puzzle games that are available, even by 1986. And then from a modern perspective, of course, way better puzzle games overall. I think this is, once again, a game that benefited from the time of release on the Nintendo. And that probably more than any other game that we have talked about is what gave it its popularity, is kind of timing more than the actual quality of at least the original arcade version. Maybe if I played the NES, they would be better for me, but Next up, we have Might and Magic Book 1. Might and Magic Book 1 is a game that I almost did for the channel. I had it in several I used to do like vote videos, which ones of these would you like me to see? And Might and Magic was in a few of them, and it was the only one that I got actually how do I phrase it? I got basically criticism for even putting it in the vote video, when I did have other people tell me, like, you should get into the Might and Magic series. I'm like, okay, let's do Might and Magic 1. They're like, no, don't do that, though. I got into it. It's a product of its time. Once again, I had difficulties with it because I ended up having to do 3 different versions of the game. I had to download 3 different games in order to make it work, because the first version that I did was bugged and broken to an extent that it didn't make sense to me. Right? I test things out, but especially with RPGs where I have to put in hours and hours of level grinding just to start. If I make it to the level grinding, it works, right? And then once I got through the level grinding, at least the initial level grinding, I found out, wait, these things were supposed to trigger and they're not. What do you mean the toughest enemies of the game are right outside town over here? Something's going wrong here, right? So then I had to do a second one. That one worked. I think it worked all the way through. It's just that the second, third, fourth round of level grinding that I had to do just became so bad that I had to get a third version just so I could avoid it. The level grinding is something that people were accepting of in 1986, but from a modern perspective, most people do not accept level grinding. And even there's even some RPG people, RPG fans, I should say, that won't accept level grinding in their RPGs now. But back in the day, it was just how the game worked. And from some point of view, it's better because it gives you more time with the game. And that's what you want. You paid money for it. You want to spend a lot of time with it, even if that time is spent level grinding. But from a modern perspective, I think it aged very poorly. Anyway, I think that it's got some good things going for it, but there's other things that I think just are best left in 1986. Next up, we have Mighty Bomb Jack. Now, Mighty Bomb Jack is a game that I hadn't heard of until I started this series. Of course, it's a sequel to Bomb Jack, which I think we only mentioned. We didn't even really play. We definitely didn't play it, though. And for me, it was a game that felt dated. Once again, because Mario kind of set the standard of what a platform game could be, you can go a different way with your platform game, but at the end of the day, it needs to be as fun, or at least close to as fun and entertaining as Mario. I did phrase that, I believe, a little poorly, both in the original video and just now, because a lot of people, or at least one person, kind of took it as, I don't like the game because it doesn't play like Mario. And that's not what I mean. You can go your own way with a platform game. It just needs to still be as fun. And for me, the structure of how Mighty Bomb Jack works was not very fun. The game essentially asks you to jump a lot and then slowly float down while avoiding enemies. And that's not how I like to play games. You know, if it's because there was no way for you to attack. If they touched you, you died. So you couldn't like jump on them or anything. You just had to jump and avoid them as you floated with your cape. And that was not a good system for me. I didn't like that. But some people do. And some people will defend it. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. But I didn't like it. I don't think that holds up well. Not my favorite console game that we have done, or really platform game that we have done. Next up, we have Arkanoid. Arkanoid is a game that I am sure I have played arguably more than any other game this year. I just don't know if the version that I played was called Arkanoid. I just remember so many games like Arkanoid, where it's a breakout style game and you get these power-ups and you try to get through the levels. I played a ton of those growing up. I don't know how I found them. I don't know where they came from. I don't know their names, but I played them, right? So I have a lot of history with this style, and I was disappointed that I couldn't get it to work right for the arcade, because I believe that one also required the dial, and I just don't have one of those. And you can be way more precise with that than I can with, left and right and stuff like that. There's just certain things that are difficult to replicate outside of the arcade cabinet, and Arkanoid is one of them. So I was happy to do it. I just wish that I was able to do it better. It's a fun game, and I look forward to the development of that genre, and hopefully we do see more of those games where it gets easier to do on a modern system, or kind of replicate outside of a cabinet, so that we can get further. And I always like power-ups and stuff like that. Get me more power-ups, stack the power-ups, and Arkanoid didn't stack them. So good, but a genre that I would like developed further before I can say absolutely play it. But play a game like it. It's a fun game. Next up, we have Trinity. That was the Infocom adventure game, another text-based adventure game. I don't think I had heard of it before I started doing this, but there's a lot of Infocom games that I hadn't heard of. I had just kind of heard of the major ones, and I've been having fun with them. Obviously, text-based adventure games are very dated by 1986. There is kind of a resurgence of it, but really it's kind of more the point-and-click style games that are kind of making a comeback, like King's Quest even, or some sort of graphics on the screen need to happen by this point. Just purely text-based is seen as dated, but it was kind of making a comeback. It's a fun game. I couldn't tell you what happened in it. That's really the interesting thing for me about Trinity, is like, I can tell you like set pieces. We went here, and then we went here, and then we went here, and I did this. But at the end of it, I just kind of thought to myself, what did I do? Did I stop it? And next thing I know, I won. Oh, okay. So would love the plot to be kind of spelled out a little bit more for me. Maybe if I had explored a little bit more and didn't just kind of laser focus on what I needed to do, it would have been better. But I don't really understand what happened in it. But I had fun playing it. It's a good game. But don't expect answers. Next up, we have Renegade. Renegade is, I believe, the first full-fledged beat-em-up that we have done. That is a genre that is, of course, going to get bigger. A lot of people know about beat-em-ups, and Renegade is not the end-all, be-all of it. It's good. it clearly, once again, the genre needs more developing. We're expanding out, but we need to refine it. And one of the things for me is I need more crowd control. I need combos. I need more. I can't just punch. All right, you're dead. One punch. Like, I need more than that. And so it's a great start, but it's difficult because it requires you to kind of exploit game mechanics as far as I can tell. Try to get this guy positioned by moving your guy here, and you'll trigger this guy, but not this guy, that kind of thing. And then you can just try to take them on one at a time. So fun. I do want to point out before we leave Renegade, this doesn't really have anything to do with Renegade itself. By the way, I'd never played it before. I don't think I heard of it. But Renegade spawns one of the largest franchises in video games, as far as I can tell. I haven't seen too many franchises that are larger than what Renegade spawns. It ends up officially being known as the Kunio-kun franchise because of the main character. His name's Kunio. And you will have, if you're a retro video game fan, you probably will have heard of a couple other games in the series. I won't name them here because we'll probably get to them later. But I will say that my video game list, I have a giant list. How many pages is it right now? 340 pages of video games I want to play, I want to talk about, TV shows, notes, important people that I'm basically just looking for obituaries on, all those kinds of things. But it's 340 pages right now. If I got rid of games that are in the Renegade franchise, which I'm probably going to get rid of a lot of them, I could probably knock the list down like 4 or 5 pages. It is huge. And so many of those games are only ever released in Japan and weren't even popular there. Renegade and the Kunio-kun franchise might drive me away from kind of my dedication towards certain franchises, and it's maybe not even worth mentioning the games in an honorable mention video at some point. So I might have to kind of reconfigure how I deal with those. But yeah, it's a gigantic one. So I like series, and I think that I'm probably more willing to play a game because it's part of a series than I would otherwise, because a lot of times those games become more popular because they're part of a series, or people look back on it like it develops into this, and this is really good, so let's see where it started, and people are more interested in that, and I'm interested in that. But there's going to have to be a limit at some point where I go, yes, that is part of the series, but it's awful, let's not even talk about it. So Kunio-kun might be the tipping point for me on that one, just because there's so many games. Next up, we have Uninvited. Uninvited was a MacVenture game, if memory serves me correctly. It was definitely a computer adventure game. I believe that was the one where we went into the haunted house and kind of had to solve all the puzzles in kind of a point and click format with that one. I'm a big fan of adventure games because they have a story. A lot of games we play don't really have a story. So I like it. I still wish that they would develop the mechanics of it a bit better, especially like the inventory and all the different screens and stuff like that. But for what it was, especially at the time, I think it's good. I just wished for more development since Deja Vu, which was the first one. It felt like playing Deja Vu again, just with a different theme. Next up, we have one of my favorites coming into... Oh, by the way, I'd never heard of Uninvited before this, but it was supposed to be good, and it was. Next up, we have one of my favorite games. Like, this was definitely one of the games that I put, a little asterisk on when I started it, or when I made the list, and like, yes, I'm looking forward to that, and that's Dragon Quest. It is the spawn of what we will end up calling Japanese-style RPGs. hugely influential game. We'll see it starting in 1987. You'll see the influence of Dragon Quest that fast. There'll be a couple other franchises that spawn because of Dragon Quest. It's a good game, and I think that there are better versions of the game than the one I played, because the version that I played is clunky. It takes a little bit to get things done. You want to talk to somebody, it's not just a simple button press. You want to get to a battle. The battles are good but not great. They're kind of streamlined and basic. There's work to be done, but Dragon Quest kind of starts the formula for what some of my favorite games end up taking off from. You have a story. You have a character that needs to get stronger. You get better equipment in that. Yeah. You have the items that you need to use. You have the very good music and the great sprites. Like, it's one of my favorite games, and at least for the year. And I'm happy that we kind of are starting to get into the genre that I actually really like, and a lot of people know me for. I will say, like I said, it's clunky. The control system isn't perfect. The amount of level grinding that you need to do is far too much. Once again, from a modern perspective, it'd probably be best to not have any level grinding, but it's not nearly as bad as the computer RPGs, the Western RPGs, like your Might and Magics and Bard Tales and Ultimas and Wizardries. Stuff like that. Dragon Quest is making things a little bit more streamlined, and I like that, and I'm looking forward to where that goes. So, big fan of that one. Played it. I believe the first time I played it was for the channel. The first time I did it, maybe I did it outside of that, but I've definitely done it before this. And once again, one of my favorites coming in. Next up, another game that I played before this project, Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. That is an interesting game. Like I said, it's like the original Super Mario Bros., but if the creators hated you and didn't want you to ever succeed. It's mean. It's a mean game. It's difficult in the sense that there are harder things for you to go through, but it's more so difficult in the sense that the creators know what you're going to do, know what you have to do, and are actively trying to stop you from doing it in an unfair way. Hidden blocks when you have to jump, springs that if you don't time exactly right will not work properly and will kill you because they did not work properly, stuff like that, poison mushrooms, lots of things like that. So fun, but not as fun as the previous Super Mario Brothers. I think it was a step down because they just wanted to make it harder. But because they made it harder, they made it less fun and worse. Played it before, had an easier time this time. You kind of learn some of the tactics, and some of them are just kind of ingrained in my skull now. But overall, game that I'm proud to go through again. It's not like it's bad, it's just disappointing. Next up, we have Bubble Bobble. Bubble Bobble is an interesting game for me in my kind of personal memories of it, because I've heard about Bubble Bobble for a long time. And for most of my childhood and teenage years, I thought Bubble Bobble was what turns out to be a spin-off of Bubble Bobble, if you know what I mean. I thought that one was called Bubble Bobble, so going back and finding out, no, Bubble Bobble, the original, is actually more or less Mario Brothers, but with bubbles. It was definitely interesting to me. And I mean, I figured that out a while ago, but for a long time, I thought that I had played Bubble Bobble, and it turns out I hadn't. It's a fun game. I think that, like I said with the other platform games, I think that if you're going to go a different direction than Mario did, which they clearly did, you have to still make it fun, and I think Bubble Bobble succeeds at that. That's a good example of a platform game that can compete in the world of Super Mario Brothers by doing something different but still fun. Like I said, it reminds me of the original Mario Brothers, right? The one where it's just the one screen and you have like the Koopas coming down and stuff like that. Bubble Bobble reminds me of that, but they expanded on that formula and made it better. So Bubble Bobble, fun game. Hopefully I'm not confused moving forward about what game I'm playing and stuff like that. Next up, we have Rampage. Rampage, of course, I had heard of. I had played a version of Rampage that was, frankly, so much better than the original. The original is fun, but it felt like I was on a timer for the arcade without officially being on a timer. And what I mean is that the enemies are going to shoot at you. They're going to hit you. You can't really avoid it. The best you can do is limit how much damage you're receiving. So it was clearly designed to eat up quarters. I don't think there's necessarily an amount of skill that you can have in order to avoid getting damaged altogether in Rampage. But it ended up being much more basic than the version that I remember. I don't remember a lot about it, but it's a good start. Once again, we're kind of going a different route of giant monster destroying a town. That sounds like fun. And then you get in and you're like, well, okay. Not what I was hoping for. And so once again, Rampage was a little disappointing for me, but overall it's still fun. Just not in the right way, or not enough for me. Then we have Salamander. Salamander was basically Gradius, another version of Gradius, and it's fun, and this is going to drive a lot of people mad, I'm not a huge fan of Gradius. It's just kind of not my style of game. I respect it. I think it's a good game, but for me, I like games that allow you to stack power-ups, which Salamander and Gradius both do, but I also like it to the point where I, just kind of wipe out an entire screen, and I never felt that sense of overwhelming power that I like in a shooter. Maybe I just like easy shooters, right? But Salamander, still good. I wouldn't say it was a huge difference for me than Gradius, but then again, it's not my genre, and maybe I'm missing a lot of the details for that. Next up, we have Leather Goddesses of Phobos. I feel like I'm using the word disappointing a lot, and this is not going to be an exception. Leather Goddesses of Phobos. Don't get me wrong again. Great game. I love the humor. It's an Infocom adventure game, and I almost always have fun playing those. But given the hype that I've heard over the years, both from kind of other members of the retro gaming community and from the game itself, like it hyped itself up in the manual, in the game itself. It just kept on promising something that it knew it wasn't going to deliver. I never played it, so I played it for the first time with, I believe, the lewdest, I think that was the word they used, the most risque setting, and I went through it anticipating that I might need to censor something for YouTube, and I played through the entire game kind of wondering, when is that going to happen? When are we going to get to the sexy moment? And then we finally get to it, and I went, that's it? That's fine. Whatever. I would argue that's PG-13 at best. And they sold it like NC-17. Now, don't get me wrong. I don't go into games going like, I need that from my video game, but that's what was promised. And I was hoping that Steve Moretsky was going to make it fun. And ultimately, I just kind of left disappointed. Don't get me wrong. Once again, very good game. Still disappointed in how it was sold. If I knew that it was basically a joke on the player the whole time, I would have a different stance on it. But the fact that they kept on pushing that and then they didn't deliver. It just felt like a broken promise. Next up, we have the film Aliens. Aliens was a film that I've seen a few times. And I also have a controversial opinion about Aliens, and that's that I like the original more than I like Aliens. I like the tension and the horror aspect of the original more than I like the action from the sequel. But most people seem to like the sequel more. And once again, they're not wrong. We just have a difference of opinion on that. I think that the horror haunted house in space of the original was very, very good, and the action kind of made it feel like another film for me. But that is because I didn't watch it when it first came out. There's not a lot of action going on, especially kind of space action other than like Star Wars. So it's very early on in that. And yeah, Star Wars, Star Trek, and then Aliens. That's basically what sci-fi combat looks like. So it took a different take on it, and a lot of people really like that. But for me, I liked Alien more. It's just that Aliens is good, just for me, not as good as the original. And I'm in the minority on that, and I get that. Speaking of aliens and action, next game is Metroid. Once again, one of those games that I, really looked forward to when I saw it on my list. It's a game that I have done before. I think I did it better this time. I did it for the channel before. Feel free to compare and contrast. I probably did it very similarly. It's a fun game, but it does have frustrating moments. There's definitely some things that kind of need fixing, I would say, even at the time, not just stylistically, but a couple bugs here and there type things. And I, once again, needed to rely on grinding in order to get through the game. It's not necessarily level grinding, it's health and missile grinding. You have to do a lot of that throughout the game, and that's not what I would like. I will say that, in my opinion, when a lot of people say how good how good Metroid is, they're not talking about this game. They're talking about a different game. And we will get to that game. But once you have played that game, it's kind of hard to go back to the original because they made so many fixes to the original formula. So knowing that it can be better, it's difficult for some people to go back to the original. But if you haven't played that other game, this game is still fun. It's a lot of fun. It's good. It's action-packed. There's just certain mechanics that every once in a while will bother you, or at least they bothered me. But yeah, still really looked forward to it. Had a lot of fun, but not as good as the hype once again. A game that completely exceeded the hype for me is next, though, and that is Starflight. Starflight, I hadn't heard of before this project, and I was nervous about it because I knew that it had a dedicated fan base. And anytime that happens, especially for a cult hit like Starflight is, I am almost certain to get people that are upset that I don't like it as much as they do. And I was worried going in that I wasn't going to like it at all, right? We've done other space exploration games, kind of truly open world games, and I've been disappointed because although the world is huge and expansive, your ability to go through it is frustrating. Starflight, I felt, made that minimal. I think that there can be improvements. Don't get me wrong. Once again, like Dragon Quest, it's a very similar menu-based system that is very clunky. So that could be streamlined, but ultimately Starflight was really good for me, and it was the surprise hit of the year for me. That one was a lot of fun, and a lot of people seem to enjoy it. So if you're here because of Starflight, welcome. It was a lot of fun for me to play, and I can absolutely see why a lot of people really liked it, and it's a cult hit. I would prefer, a couple things here and there different. I would like the story to be laid out differently. I don't want to spoil anything for the story, but that was not the way that I would structure the story, I guess I could say. The end of it in particular. That's all I'm going to say. I'm trying my best not to give anything away. So the story could have used a little bit of work in how it was told and the end result of it, but I think the story was really good. I think that the level grinding was minimal, which was great. It was just kind of a sense, the game gave you clues how to move forward. Here's little tidbits of, I think something's at this location. All right, well, I'll go to that location. Hey, it turned out to be a quest item. But there are things that the game does really well. I just wish that there were the aspects that it didn't do as well were improved, right? But still, one of the top games for me this year, definitely the hidden gem, so to speak, because I hadn't heard of it at all. Next up, we have Gauntlet 2. Not a lot to say about Gauntlet 2. It's Gauntlet 1 with different levels. A little bit of a change here or there, but not necessarily enough to justify an entirely new game for me. So it's Gauntlet. Again, Gauntlet 2. Fun, but fun with a limited amount for me, because Gauntlet also just kind of is a quarter eater. You can only make it so far, and then you're kind of screwed because you just have to eat damage all the time. That time, it's on a clock. At every second in the timer is damage to you. So, fun. It's still fun, but I don't know if it needed to be its own game. Next up is Outrun. Outrun is another game from Yu Suzuki. He does great work. This is probably the best of the bunch that he has done to this point. It is a racing game. You go fast and you turn. There's not a lot for me to talk about with racing games, which is why for racing games, the technical aspects of it are so important. The graphics are great. The sound is great. They had what felt like legitimate radio music in the game. So it felt really good. It's probably the best that he has done to this point. I had never played this game by itself, but I played so many games that are basically Outrun, but with this year's technology. And so it's good to see the original. We'll see several games that are heavily inspired by it. It's a good game. It's worth checking out, but there's not really a lot for me to talk about with it. It's good. It's a racing game. It feels like a lot of other racing games. But the technical aspects are what made it really good. So it's always nice to see those racing games, and you can kind of get a chance to see how good graphics and sound can get. But the gameplay is straightforward. It's a racing game. Next up, we have another game that I was excited to get to, Castlevania. I've done that one before for the channel. I did a lot better this time, if memory serves me right. You get used to Castlevania as you continue to play it several times through. And the way to defeat the final boss, so to speak, is something that is just kind of ingrained in my skull, and I won't lose it. I will, if 5 years from now I get to it, I'll know my technique to get to it because I just had to practice it so much. It's a difficult game. And once again, platform game. The platforming aspects of it are its weak spot. From the knockback to the way that the character just falls, to some of the jumps and things like that. Those are the weakest aspects, but once you get into fighting, it's a lot of fun. And so, once again, kind of a flawed game, could use improvement, but very good for the time, and you can see why it spawned sequels, which we will get to. Speaking of sequels, next game is King's Quest 3. I'm a big fan of the King's Quest games. I like them. With that said, this was the most disappointing of the three so far. And a lot of it has to do with a very particular mechanic of the game that is kind of ingrained through the whole thing. And that's that certain events happen on a real-time clock. Which sounds good. It makes it more immersive. It is based on what you do. But because there are only a certain limited number of things that you can do during certain time periods, you end up waiting a lot. And there were, I believe, two times where I ended up having to just cut it and waiting like 5 minutes for the game to allow me to do the next thing. So as you get better at the game punishes you because of this real-time clock. So let's say you have 5 minutes to do something, to do a certain list of tasks. And then once that 5 minutes is up, you have another 5 minutes where you have to complete the next list of tasks. But you can't get those done. You can't do any of those until that 5 minute mark crosses, right? So you finish the first time in like 4.5 minutes. You only have to wait 30 seconds and then you can do the next set of tasks, right? But as you get better and you know what you're doing, you can easily do the first list of tasks in a minute. And all that means is now you have to wait 4 minutes. You have to wait longer because you're too good at the game. And that's what it kind of felt like. It was just like, I'm being punished for knowing what to do. So it's fun. It's got a good story. But that one mechanic made it the worst of the three for me. And so it's still good. I still enjoyed playing it, but it was the first time I got to play it. But knowing that the better I got, the worse it was going to be for me, made it harder for me to play. But it's still good. I still enjoyed it. Next up, we have a sports game. This is the video game named Pro Wrestling, because you can just name a game Pro Wrestling at this time, and nobody else had a game like that. Pro Wrestling was fun. I do enjoy wrestling. I probably talk about it more than people would like me to talk about it, but it's a huge part of the culture in the mid-'80s. It will continue to be a big part of the culture as we continue. But this particular game, I did enjoy, but there's still mechanics that I would like to see fixed. It's designed essentially like a fighting game, so I'm going to judge it as if it was a fighting game and not really a sports game, even though it's technically a sports game. Pro wrestling's weird. Is it fighting? Is it sports? Is it television? Where do I put pro wrestling? Because I have to talk about it. So the game is difficult and requires you almost to exploit using mechanics that you would not do normally. There's a certain move that you can use that if you position yourself properly and time it right, you'll just keep doing the move over and over and you'll win. That was the common consensus on how to play the game. And that's not how I like to play pro wrestling games. I like variety. I like to show off all the different moves and not just do the same kick over and over and over again just to win. But I like that it used real life wrestlers. I like that it had a lot of mechanics in the game that were true to real life pro wrestling. So it's good, but it needs fine tuning. And we're at the stage where people are experimenting with genres and they're missing certain aspects of it while getting others right. And this is another example of that. So far, it seems like a disappointing year, doesn't it? Let's get to some good games. Well, next we have Jackal. Jackal was fun, but once again, kind of disappointing. There were certain aspects of the game that I felt were programmed differently, and then they had to change it last minute, so you kind of got stuck with a version that didn't work quite right. Jackal, once again, probably more famous for being an early NES title than the actual arcade, so a lot of people talk about it, and then when you get in, you're like, well, okay, it's a run and gun. Even though technically in Jackal, that's the one with the Jeeps, right? But the Jeeps would only ever shoot up because of the arcade and how it worked. There were certain versions that worked, certain versions that didn't. So it's a hit or miss game. If they hadn't fixed that and you could shoot in any directions, right? Roboton 2084 got it figured out. Like, let's make this work. And it just felt like they didn't. So disappointing, but it still got some fun to it. It just could have been so much better. Oh, we're okay. Next up, Genpei Tomaden, more disappointment. Genpei Tomaden, I had never even heard of before this. And when I started researching it and finding out that in Japan, it was considered one of the best video games of all time, still. Not at the time it was released. Still. I had high hopes for the game. And maybe those high hopes were too high and I was oversold. But Genpei Tomaden also had graphics like that screenshot when I first looked at it. I'm like, this game can't have come out in 1986 and look like that. No way. That's got to be a remake, a remaster, something else. So then when I finally got into it and booted it up and we got into especially big mode where the sprites take up like the majority of the screen, it was real quick for me to realize why that game could have been made in 1986. The sprites did not move right. If you didn't see it, there were basically 3 different aspects of the game. There were 3 different, more or less, mini games for you to go through. You could be little mode, which is kind of like a top-down, almost like gauntlet perspective, where you just kind of walk to the right and kill everything. And then there was, I think they called it small mode, where it was kind of a platformer with a very small sprite. That kind of reminds me of, God, what does it remind me of? It was so small, but it was kind of like a Wonder Boy type platforming, but with a much smaller character that was Japanese and historic. And then they had big mode, which is what they probably sold the game on because it had the best sprites on it. And that was almost kind of like a fighting game. And it looked amazing. But then as soon as your character started moving, it was so janky. And it never felt like I was doing things right. And then the problem was that every mode that I was in, like, hitboxes didn't feel right. The attacking didn't feel right. Movement didn't feel quite right either. And I know that I wasn't playing it correctly, but the game should kind of also show me what works and what doesn't. And I couldn't figure that out as I played. So it was a huge disappointment for me, Genpei Tomaden. For people to still say it's one of the best games of all time. And I kind of look at it and I go, well, it makes for a really good screenshot, but outside of that, I wasn't having fun. Oh, more disappointment. Next up, we have Nobunaga's Ambition. We're going to get to good games. Yeah, a couple. Nobunaga's Ambition by Koei was basically the same as Romance of the Three Kingdoms. It was basically Romance of the Three Kingdoms, but in Japan and in a different time period. It was essentially the same game. However, what made it such a bigger disappointment for me is that I found, I think, 4 or 5 guides trying to teach me how to play the game and win. And I followed the advice of all of them and nothing worked for me. They were just kind of telling me, oh, you need to assassinate to win. Just kill all the enemies with assassination and then take over their land. It'll be real easy. You'll do great. I think I did assassination attempts about 50 times, both on and off screen, and it never worked. Not a single time. And I'm like, okay, and the way that they changed the save mechanics made it almost impossible for me to reload a save and try again the way that I could in Romance of the Three Kingdoms. So then I thought, okay, let's go all out blitz, just attack on the first turn. Well, that didn't work either. All right, let's bide my time. And the more that I bided my time, the more that my enemies built up armies that I had no chance of ever conquering. So I couldn't figure out how to beat it. So that became a disappointment for me just because, in 3 attempts that you guys saw and like 2 or 3 attempts off screen, it never worked. Nothing I tried worked. So I don't know. And I read the manual, right? Give me a hint. What am I supposed to do? I figured it's all about timing. Well, okay, this guy's conquered over half of Japan. Can I attack him yet? No. He'll die. So it's basically the same as Romance of the Three Kingdoms, so you didn't see any improvement there. And then the gameplay for me got worse because it became indecipherable of what I needed to do. So, not great. Next up, we have a good game, Space Quest 1. Yay, Space Quest. Basically the same as King's Quest, but in space. And it was fun. I enjoyed it. And there's not too much for me to say about it, other than like the humor. There was definitely more humor in this game compared to the King's Quest game, which I enjoy. I felt that it was a good adventure. I felt that it had a good story, and we conquered everything. It was good. I enjoyed it. First time actually getting to play it for myself, so that's always fun. Next up, we have Alex Kidd in Miracle World. I figured that this was a cult hit, but based on basically how the video did, it seems like it wasn't. I figured that there were going to be entire countries that were saying how great this game was and that it was going to be better than Mario, which it is not. It's a fun game, but once again, as it was designed to be a Mario killer, for it to fall that short of Mario is a disappointment. For it to have a punch that doesn't always work the way that I would like, a character that doesn't always move the way that I would like, and for boss fights to essentially be rock, paper, scissors battles. Not like, oh, I choose this attack and you choose this attack. No, literally rock, paper, scissors at the end of levels. And they give you a thing so you can figure out what the enemy is going to do, and then it doesn't work. It doesn't help. There's so many problems with Alex Kidd in Miracle World. I can see why it never took over the same way that Mario did. But I am happy that I got to play it because I've heard about it for so long. Just not up to par of the time, I think. Next up, we have Defender of the Crown. Defender of the Crown is a gorgeous game. It looks so good. The gameplay itself, however, is very streamlined and basic. It is a conquer the map type game, similar to Romance of the Three Kingdoms or Nobunaga's Ambition, but it happens a lot easier. And then there are mini games that once you figure out the trick for, become very, very straightforward and easy. The mini game boils down to all of them. Boil down to put your mouse on the right spot on the screen and click as necessary. That was it. So once you figured out where to put your mouse and when to click, it became very simple. Very short game. I actually did a full run of it twice before I actually did it for you guys. So yeah, it was an easy game once you figured out the tricks. If you didn't figure out the tricks, you were going to suffer. But fun game, looks amazing. It looks so much better than it plays. However, the gameplay needed to rise up to match it, and I felt like it didn't. But very pretty game. I never played it. Happy to get into it. Next up, we have the intro video for basketball. These are hit and miss on the channel. I put so much effort into these. I'm actually scripting another one of these right now, an introduction to a sport, because I don't want to leave anybody behind, right? I don't want anybody to watch me play a basketball game and go, what the hell is going on? Why is there a ball? Why are you bouncing it, right? I want to explain what the game is like for somebody that has never seen it before or doesn't understand it. So I try to make these to make it at least palatable to watch me play the game, and you can kind of get a vague sense of what's going on. For basketball in particular, I actually played basketball growing up. I was a short kid. I believe I was 5'0" as a freshman in high school. Short. I grew much later in life. Let me do some quick math here. About 150 centimeters, give or take. For you, those of you that are international, not good for a. I would have been 15 at the time. Not good for a 15-year-old as a freshman in high school. 5 foot is not good enough to make the team for basketball, so I had to drop it after that. But I played. I was a point guard. I was really good at handling the ball. I wasn't the best shooter, but I was a really good passer, really good defender. So I thought that I, was going to make it at least a little bit, or at least have the team give me a chance. But when I made it to high school, if you were under 6 foot, whole 12 inches taller than me, you didn't even get called back after 15 minutes of the tryout. Like, all right, the rest of you can leave. Like, oh, thanks. But I understand the game. I understand the history of the game. There was a little bit that I learned into it. I didn't know the Globetrotters were that old. I didn't know that much about the ABA. I had heard some things, and of course I've seen a movie or two making fun of it. Well, one movie making fun of it, but it was fun getting into that. At the time right now, we are very much in the Magic versus Bird era in 1986. And I know some people want me to talk about another player, but that will have to come later when that player becomes the dominant force in basketball. As of right now, Magic versus Bird. Then we actually played a game based on basketball, Double Dribble. Double Dribble is another kind of legendary basketball game because of the port to the NES. The arcade game functions a little bit differently. You have to dribble in it, which I thought was a very strange choice. And there are mechanics that make it almost impossible for me to ever pass the ball. Once everybody was set up in defense and offense around the 3-point line, I basically couldn't pass. I had to just kind of dribble in circles until they gave me a lane for a layup. And then finally at the end, I figured out how to shoot a 3. But yeah, the game, it was the first game to give you a full team on each side, a 5 versus 5 game. And it didn't necessarily feel like it, but because it was really good, but it definitely felt like an earlier one where they hadn't quite figured out all the mechanics yet. Once again, just kind of needs a little bit of work. Next up, we have Rolling Thunder, which is a game I legitimately forgot that I had done. And it's pretty recent, so that's not a good sign for me, because it's a good game. That was the one where we were kind of the spy and we were shooting and going to the right. Once again, good setup for a game. I just felt like it needed more improvements. There's a seed of a really good game there, but the way that the bullets travel and your character moves and the way that the jumping works and going into doors and stuff like that, which I believe we'll see more of that a lot later. A lot of things about it were just kind of just off for me that kept it from being a really good game, but still a very fun game. It's definitely worth checking out if you're into that kind of genre, but for me, it just kind of need, once again, just small little tweaks. A lot of the games that we played, like, they just needed some tweaks to make it so much better for me. And Rolling Thunder is one of them. It's good, but it could have been better. Next up, we have Pro Baseball Family Stadium. It was a baseball game, and it was the first one that we played that kind of felt like an arcade style, kind of cartoony, even though they had the real professional Japanese baseball players in it. At least I'm told. I couldn't double check it because I couldn't read the game and I couldn't find the rosters from the actual teams at the time. So your guess is as good as mine. They said it was. Sorry about that. They said it was, so I'm going to trust them on it. But it's a fun game. I feel like Hardball, the other baseball game that we played, was much more cerebral and contemplative and slower, basically, more strategic. This game was much more arcade style of, I'm going to throw the ball and make it dance. Let's see if you hit it. And then, all right, I could just run. And to me, At this time, I think I had more fun playing Family Stadium than I did the original Hardball, because when you're going for something realistic, anytime that it's off, it really feels off. And there were a few things in Hardball that felt off because they're going for a more cartoony style. In this game, anything that felt off was a little bit easier to justify, and it wasn't nearly as bad in terms of the mechanics. So I think this was a better game. I think it's an improvement for the baseball formula. Next up, we have The Bard's Tale 2. This was one of the bigger games this year. This is one of the ones that I believe several people were questioning why I kept on going, why I did it in the first place. The game was good for the first half. It's got a good setup. I felt that for the first half of the game, it was pretty standard for what we had been doing for computer RPGs of this time, right? You have some level grinding, you get some better equipment, you get some levels, then you go into the dungeon, and you make some progress. The second half of the game, though, for The Bard's Tale 2 really fell apart for me. Really just took a nosedive in terms of quality assurance, in terms of, like, did anybody test this? In terms of overall design and plot, I felt like they just kind of threw in plot at the very end just to have something. It didn't necessarily make sense what direction they took at the end. And ultimately, it felt like the decisions that I made didn't really matter. There was just so much wrong in terms of the game's mechanics at the end. It just all fell apart, of having battles where physical attacks missed like 97, 98% of the time, or having snares, puzzles at the end of dungeons that need to be hand drawn out while you're on a real-time clock, otherwise you die. And that's the only way to solve these, right? Or having incredibly vague clues that need very specific answers. It just all didn't feel right to me towards the end. So the game was fine for a while. It was, I would say, pretty standard for the time for the first half. I can see, if you hadn't played other games, why you would like that game when you first started. But the second half, it just fell apart for me. Very, very disappointing game for me. So much level grinding, so much. Somebody pointed out it was probably designed to sell a hint book. And that's something that we haven't really talked about too much, is that with a lot of these more difficult games, on top of paying for the game, you would then get an advertisement in the game's manual or a separate card or something like that, that would advertise, oh, are you struggling with the game? Pay more money and get this guidebook from us, and that can tell you how to do these games. And so somebody pointed out it was probably designed that badly to sell hint books, because there was no way you were going to make it through the game without it. And that's entirely possible, but that's how bad the game kind of got towards the end, where clues didn't make sense, where mechanics were just kind of thrown at you and you just had to assume the game just assumed that you would know. So you would just kind of lose over and over again trying to figure it out. Just fell apart at the end. So disappointing there. And then the final game that we played was Kid Icarus, which was an interesting game. I think it's, once again, a platform game that does something different than Mario, and I think it did it pretty well, but there were definitely certain mechanics of the game that I felt weren't good. The fact that there is level grinding. You had to keep killing the same enemies over and over. Otherwise, you weren't going to get the best ending, or you weren't going to get the strength upgrades. Memorization of certain areas were necessary. Just a lot of weird kind of things. It felt rushed, and it felt like it was done in the same engine as Metroid, because it was. And I'm not sure how much of Metroid was just kind of carried over into Kid Icarus that was not originally designed for Kid Icarus. You know, the game kind of felt off the way that Metroid felt off. In Metroid, it was clearly intentional. They're going for kind of a vibe like Aliens, or the Alien first movie. And so it had this sense of foreboding that kind of transferred over to Kid Icarus, and I'm not sure it belonged there. I'm not sure if that was intentional. I just don't know. So it felt rushed. I understand why it's a cult classic. I think that is the right place for it. It's definitely going to be fun for some people, but definitely not fun for other people. All right, I've been talking about these for a long time. This is going to be a long video because there's more for us to get through. Next up, we have a list of games that almost were videos. I basically took these out when I went to script it. They were originally on the list to play, but in the interest of time and kind of trying to keep a higher quality, they just didn't make the cut. And those are Gunship, Star Glider, Uridium, Gettysburg The Turning Point, Where in the USA is Carmen Sandiego? That one hurt a little bit. The Black Cauldron, that one also hurts. Super Sprint, Chessmaster 2000, Rebel Star, Gigi no Kitaro, The Great Escape, Heavy on the Magic, Quasitron, Top Gun, both a film and a video about the game, Sapiens, both video games based on aliens that are just called Aliens, Vampire Killer, Solaris, Sylphid, and Alex Kidd The Lost Stars. At one point or another, I was planning on doing videos on those and playing them all the way through, but had to take them out eventually. And there's some games on these lists that I might go back and do on a stream at some point if I have time for streaming. Right now, I'm just kind of focused on playing the games. And Where in the USA is Carmen Sandiego and The Black Cauldron. Those are ooh, I wanted to play those. All right. Let's get into things I learned this year. Hooray, learning. Things I learned. The Lost Levels is the best-selling Famicom Disk System game of all time. Ever. That means it's more popular than The Legend of Zelda, Metroid, and Castlevania. While it's understandable, after the success of Super Mario Bros., that the sequel would be the best-selling FDS game of all time, it's still surprising to me that it outsold what I would consider better games in The Legend of Zelda, Metroid, and Castlevania. I would consider all three of those better than The Lost Levels, but based on Mario Star Power, The Lost Levels sold the most on that peripheral, I guess it's technically called, of all time. Next up, this was actually surprising to me. I know it shouldn't have been, but so many games are basically structured with the plot of the player plays as male character who must rescue female character from the evil villain. So many games are like that. Of the games that we did this year, like Zelda, Lost Levels is like that. Metroid is not, Castlevania is not, but Dragon Quest is. I think even King's Quest 3 is either way. There's so many of them. King's Quest 3 might have been a brother. Either way, I knew it was a problem that the games were feeding into these gender roles where only the male character can rescue the helpless female character from the evil male character again. But it's so much worse than I thought. There's so many, and as I'm writing the honorable mentions videos, it's really hitting me. It's just your male character has to rescue the helpless female character from the evil male villain, just over and over and over again. I'm writing that. So it's worse than I thought it was. I knew it was bad, but I didn't know it was that bad. And let's face it, it's gonna get worse before it gets better. That becomes the stereotype of how to design a game, is to have a male character rescue a female character from some evil character. And yeah, the female characters are basically just there to be essentially a MacGuffin. You're just there to be a goal. That's it. That's disappointing. I'm glad that there's some things that are changing from that. around here. There's like, of course, Metroid is different than that. There's other plots, like Starflight isn't like that. Looking over my list again. Space Quest isn't like that. Defender of the Crown's not like that. There's other things going on, but that is the standard, and that's disappointing for me. Next up, what I learned is that the Master System struggled so much back in the day. I've heard about the Master System. I knew people that swore the Master System was the better system. And technically, like from a technical standpoint, it is more powerful. I knew it struggled compared to the NES, but I didn't realize it was this bad, especially early on. So the Sega Mark III, right? That's the version in Japan. It only had half the sales of the Famicom Disk System by the end of 1986. And it had fewer games than the disk system, than the peripheral, the add-on, let alone the actual Famicom. So if you're in Japan and you ask a friend, like, what video games do you have? He's more likely to tell you, well, I have the disk system and I have the lost levels in it, than he is to tell you, oh yeah, I have Alex Kidd in Miracle World. To me, that's crazy. It was that much worse. I knew it was worse. It was that much worse of a sales overall. Like, that's crazy to me. And then final thing that I learned, and this is just from my perspective, this is an opinion. Everything else was kind of objective, or at least I could prove it. But from my perspective, game reviewers in 1986 don't really factor in originality, right? At least as much as I would. If a game is very similar to an earlier, usually more popular game, in modern times, we would often hold it against the new game. But that's not the case in 1986, right? If you play a game today and you're like, oh, this is exactly the same as your old game or somebody else's game, like, that's a knock against it. But in 1986, that doesn't seem to be the case. There are lots of games that are being released right now that feel very similar to older games, but are still considered classics. Sometimes there are major changes, but often it just feels like a slight improvement over the old game. I think this was because, personally, I think it was because they didn't expect players to own enough games for it to be an issue. But we would assume that people have played games today, right? Back then, you wouldn't assume that players that were interested in buying Spin Dizzy had also played Marble Madness. You wouldn't assume that people that had that were playing, I don't know, I'm looking at my list trying to find something that would work for that. You wouldn't assume that people that had played Salamander or were going to go play Salamander at the arcade, that they had played Gradius. You wouldn't assume that somebody that was going to play Outrun had played Hang On. Like, stuff like that wasn't really in their criteria. So when I look at reviews at the time, I also have to kind of dig in and think, like, all right, is this good because it's just like this other good game? Especially in British computer games. Like, how many versions of Night Lore have I put into the honorable mentions videos? And they're still getting like over 8s out of 10s, 80s out of 100s. They're getting high scores when I look at it and I go, that's basically this game again. And it's interesting that it wasn't a big deal back then. At least that's from my perspective. It does not seem like it's a big deal. All right, now some things to keep in mind as we keep going. Now that the NES has been fully released, at least in America, I'm going to talk a little bit about how I plan to treat the differences between the Famicom and the NES. It's technically the same console, right? The NES is the Famicom, but in America. But I plan on treating them like two different consoles. The reason for that is that several major games make major changes to video games. Several major games make major changes when I wrote it wrong. when localizing from Japan to the United States, or from the United States to Japan. Sometimes the level of essentially being a new port. We will talk about that when some of the games that I know come from Japan to America, and it's almost like a completely different game. And because of that, I'm going to treat it like two different consoles. So I'm going to say, hey, this was ported to the Famicom, meaning it was released in Japan. And then I'll say this game that was ported to the Famicom already was ported to the NES here in America. Because a lot of times I'm going to have to then say, hey, but they also took out like this part and this part and this part, or they changed this or something like that. So because of that, we're going to treat it as two different consoles. A lot of the reason for that is that Nintendo of America, and specifically Nintendo of America, has stricter quality control for the NES than the Famicom, which delays a lot of games. So there's going to be sometimes a year or two between releases for the Famicom and releases for the NES. And once again, the reason for that is because of the video game crash of 1983. They saw that the Atari failed because of what they saw as like risque games, essentially like porn games and low quality games in America. So you're more likely to get a bad game for the Famicom than you are for the NES because they just have stricter quality control. So anytime there's movement between the Famicom and the NES, we're going to treat it like a port. When it comes to sales numbers, if I know the sales numbers for a particular region, I will give that sales number when that version is fully released. Let's say a game was released in Japan first. If I know just the Japanese sales numbers, I'll tell you it then. But if I only know the total sales number overall, I'm going to wait until the last one is released. And the reason for that is pretty straightforward. It would have been weird for me to say when Super Mario Bros. Was released just in Japan before the NES even existed that it sold like 40 million copies. Like, how did that happen? Well, it eventually gets released in America, and that's when it sells that much. So that is how I'm going to treat it. It's just the way that it makes sense to me. So that kind of explains why I'm treating the Famicom and NES separate. Keep in mind, especially when it comes to the Famicom and the NES, that the time between the Famicom's original release in Japan and the NES's full release in North America is over 3 years. That means that the NES, when it was released, was already a 3-year-old console technologically. So it's already behind the times, right? The NES is not the most powerful console on the market. Not even close. The Atari 7800 and the Master System are both more powerful than the NES. You know, the NES is a 3-year-old console, and when it was designed, it wasn't using the top-of-the-line stuff. It was already not super powerful 3 years ago, in 1983. The NES's success is due to its games. The games are better on the Nintendo. We will keep an eye on the NES, but it feels like from the outside that the system is already dated, and it just got released. It already feels like the NES is not powerful enough to compete with things that could be released now. But at the time, in 1986, that wasn't a concern at all. It was not considered like, oh, this is an old system. This is not great. But they weren't thinking that at all. They were just like, this is amazing. This is the best thing ever. But from the outside, you know, the console is primed to be replaced already. All right. We are starting to see that Japanese video game companies are starting to specialize in certain genres. It's been the case in America for a while, like Infocom doing text-based adventures, Sierra doing graphic-based adventures, but it really is starting to become much more popular in Japan. Two companies that are standing out for me that do that are Koei, who made Romance of the Three Kingdoms and Nobunaga's Ambition, and Nihon Falcom, who are making RPGs, kind of the only thing that they're starting to make. They made Xanadu, and I think that's the only one that we played, but they're focusing on RPGs. So we're starting to see specialists over in Japan when we hadn't before. We're also seeing a widening gap between the different markets, especially on consoles. Some games that are popular in Japan are never being released in North America, and vice versa. Some things in North America aren't being released in Japan. Europe is kind of its own thing. And the games are really hit and miss depending on the console, the company, the platform, right? Europe's kind of its own thing, and it's hard to gauge sometimes. Like, hey, what was popular there? What was even released there? Sometimes they just don't let me know. Last thing to keep in mind is something that I brought up before, which is keep in mind that I'm always trying to play the original versions of the game when available, not the best version of the game, right? It wouldn't make sense for me to play like a remaster that was released in 2022 and then a remake or a port that was released in like 1997 and another port that was released in 2012. And those are the best versions of these games. And I go, and those are the games of 1986. Right? It doesn't make sense. It just doesn't add up for me. It's not how I'm thinking about it. So I do get comments every once in a while of that's not a legitimate complaint for this game because they fixed that 20 years later. You know what I mean? For me, this is what the game was when it was released. This is what became pivotal for the history of video games as a whole. The point of this series is to show the history and evolution of video games as a whole, and it's not to make a particular game look better than it was when it was released. The goal is to kind of show how things moved. And one of the things that I want to show is a video game, for lack of a better term, warts and all. I want to show it as it was with its flaws. I don't want to try to hide how bad certain aspects were in order to make things look better than they were. All right. Let's get into awards. No, we'll do awards in a little bit. We'll do Patreon first. If you guys are unfamiliar, I do have a Patreon. It's linked in every video. And for $1 a month, you can help support the channel. There's not a lot of perks that you're going to get. That's why I say it's to support the channel. You get early access to videos for everything except for these. These I have to kind of record last minute. So the patrons unfortunately don't get early access to this. If I could time it, like figure out the timing a little bit better, maybe I could, but right now, no. So let's list out the Patreon. They get that, and they get an opportunity to put their thoughts into this video. So let's go over the patrons, and I will thank them individually. I'll just go by first names here if that's what I see. We'll go. So thank you to Greg, Rob, Sean, Marcus, Gibbous, Issa, Veronica, Squirrel Dash, and Mike. And then in terms of actually getting their thoughts in there, looks like it was only Issa and Demi that wanted to have theirs in there. So let's read what they say. They'll probably echo a lot of things that I said. I haven't read this yet, but we tend to agree on a lot of things. And we will move on from there. I don't need to say how important this year was, especially when it comes to the Famicom getting a proper footing, creating a roster of titles for many different genres and niches, experimenting but also mixing together things to interesting results. That doesn't mean the games are a lot more balanced or easy, but it's harder to call them mistakes and easier to consider them things to be improved upon. Of this year, we have played The Legend of Zelda, Dragon Quest, Metroid, Castlevania, King's Quest III, Space Quest I, The Bard's Tale 2, not this version, and Kid Icarus. You probably played a much better version of the Bard's Tale than I did. Bard's Tale 2 than I did. I saw what they did later on. They fixed a lot of things, but not everything. A few observations for them. Zelda is impressive. It almost immediately nailed a formula that works. I think a few secrets and mechanics can still be a bit too obscure, but I don't have any real complaints. Dragon Quest, by modern standards, it's a bit grindy. By that time standard, it was quite lenient, especially dying being not that big of a deal. Story is very barren, but at least it was functional, and it's too early to talk about what this game means, but its existence is important for me personally, as it's thanks to what it did, together with a few others, that I'm even a gamer today. Without, I would probably be interested mostly in visual novels or adventure games as they're known in Japan, another parallel to the one we are following, or very casual games. Metroid, I find this game very cute. Weird thing to say for such an ambiance riddled with aliens and whatnot, but the colors and the designs really make me like it. The gameplay is also pretty neat. Castlevania. I wish this game was a little less hard. I understand the design choices and its reputation helped it grow, but it's too hard for me personally, so I can't enjoy it properly. Of course, this is just my own problem. Good for the game to have found its audience. The difficulty level, it's on the hard side. Like, at some point, video games figure out that if we make things slightly easier, people will enjoy it more. It didn't happen in 1986 yet, unfortunately. King's Quest III. My only clear memory of it being very confused about when and how time passes and how to be where I'm supposed to be when I need to. I like the idea, but it was way too early for a complex time system that influences event flags. Space Quest was alright, I don't really have much to say. The Bard's Tale 2, I'm glad I could port over my already OP characters, not that it made the game an instant win or anything, but it definitely helped. I find those types of games tiring to play, which is a pity. Kid Icarus, the necessity to grind hearts to unlock items and get health upgrades, etc. was a bit of a mind-boggling choice to me. I always feel like these kinds of platform or action games are better if you can keep on the move at least semi-consistently. Having to stand there for several minutes feels off to me. I like the sprite work and the goofiness of it. The portions with the rooms before the bosses are not my favorite. I prefer having the open space around me in this game. My game of the year is Dragon Quest, but purely because of my personal preference for turn-based over action. I do think Metroid and Zelda are better overall, more interesting if anything. Dragon Quest has a bit of a way to go. We look forward to 1987. All right. Like I said, I agree with most of that. I don't know. It feels like sometimes that I read those and then I do this video and people are like, well, yeah, you stole that from them. I'm like, no, I didn't. We agree on several things. All right. So, awards. Let's get into the awards. This is kind of just my personal thoughts about the year, kind of some of my favorites and things like that. So, the favorite film of the year, I'm giving it to Aliens. I know I said I didn't like it as much as the original Alien, but it's the best of this year for me. Honorable mentions. There's quite a few, actually. 1986 was a good year for film, at least for like stuff that I liked. Highlander, Labyrinth, The Great Mouse Detective, An American Tale, Three Amigos, Little Shop of Horrors, and Fist of the North Star. Those were all good. Aliens was my favorite, though, of the bunch. Favorite TV show. I finally get a chance to say a TV show that I actually really like. Everything else is like, I guess this. No, this year I actually have one. Dragon Ball. The original Dragon Balls. A lot of people know a different Dragon Ball. The original one. Goku is tiny. That one. I love it. It's honestly one of my favorites. I recommend it to a lot of people. Honorable mentions this year. Blackadder 2, starring Rowan Atkinson. I believe in the second one, Hugh Laurie is there. I forget. The Golden Girls is also good. Alfred Hitchcock Presents is also fun. But for me, Dragon Ball, yes, you should watch Dragon Ball. Everything else, I'm like, oh yeah, I watched it and I liked it. But Dragon Ball, I recommend to people. I finally get to do that. All right. Favorite console of the year? No surprises. The Famicom. The NES, of course, you could consider that, but the Famicom just has more titles, and it basically has everything the NES has. So the Famicom. Next up, the most disappointing game of the year. There were some contenders. There were a lot of contenders for this one. I'll do the honorable mentions first. Nightmare comes to mind. Just dated stuff, not all that interesting. Spin Dizzy, because it's designed to be a very simple game, and they got the simple mechanic of moving incorrect in my mind. So that was disappointing, especially considering it got like an average of like 94 or 95 by critics at the time out of 100. Mighty Bomb Jack, it just felt like the wrong mechanic to do, to just have you float and dodge enemies for a certain period of time or in order to make progress. Just didn't like it. And The Bard's Tale 2, like I said, that second half was just very disappointing. But overall, I'm going to have to say the most disappointing game of the year is Genpei Tomaden. The game just didn't seem to function right. It never felt like I was in control of the characters. There were 3 mini games and all of them didn't seem to work. And to hear that in Japan, it's still considered one of the best arcade games of all time boggles my mind. I don't understand it. It was very disappointing for me. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe it's just because I'm bad at it. I don't know. It just really disappointed me this year. Game that aged the worst. You're going to see a lot of things kind of similar here. Honorable mentions, Spin Dizzy. It just, the mechanics of it just didn't work quite right. The Sentinel, primarily because of graphics. Like the graphics just didn't age well. Everything, like the mechanics of the game, I think are a little slow, but like that's not the worst thing. It really is just the graphics. Nightmare, because once again, it just felt dated for the time. Dark Castle, because of how slow this platform was in a way that wasn't necessarily on purpose. Mighty Bomb Jack, again, because the style of how to play the game, I feel, is not going to work for modern players. Might and Magic, because of how difficult it was to get to work properly, and the fact that there's nothing on the screen to show you that, hey, one step ahead is going to be, a very important square. Like, no, you just kind of step there and go, oh, this was important. And King's Quest 3, because of the real-time clock mechanics. Just, no, that's not how you want that game to work. It could have worked, but the way that it works with such a limited list of things to do, you just end up waiting around all the time. Or at least in several occasions. But the game that actually aged the worst for me this year was The Bard's Tale 2. From you needing to do so much level grinding in comparison to how much time you actually spent doing things that were productive, from needing to draw things out to a real-time clock, to battle systems that didn't seem to function right at the end, at least from my perspective. Having half your party be essentially useless is not good game design. All that kind of, from a plot that was essentially get the MacGuffin and win. Oh, wait, here's a surprise. None of that worked for me. The second half of the game made it age so poorly, in my opinion. So The Bard's Tale 2 has got to be the game that aged the worst. I've talked a lot about that. So shouldn't have been too much of a surprise there. Favorite shooter of the year? I'm going to give that to Fantasy Zone. Fantasy Zone was a lot of fun. Shooters are not my favorite. Some honorable mentions here, though, are, Fantasy Zone, I think it's mostly because of the colors and the difficulty and kind of things that are different. A lot of things kind of feel samey for me. Honorable mentions, Akari Warriors, Salamander. If you count it, I put a note here, like, if you count it as a shooter, Metroid, because that's what it was considered at the time, but I don't consider it a shooter. If you consider Metroid a shooter, then it'd be my favorite shooter of the year. It's better for me than Fantasy Zone, but I don't count it. Jackal and Rolling Thunder. Probably Rolling Thunder is probably my second favorite of the bunch, because the other ones feel very samey to me. Akari Warriors and Jackal, they feel very similar. Salamander just kind of feels like Gradius again. Unless I'm remembering anything wrong. I'm pretty sure that's how I remember it. Favorite adventure game? Legend of Zelda. It's got to be The Legend of Zelda for me. It put so many things that were working well, things that I liked about other games like Hide Light and Xanadu. There were aspects of those games that I enjoyed, and they got brought into The Legend of Zelda to be really good. Yes, as Issa mentioned, there's still some obscurity going on there. There's still some, how was I supposed to know that? There's a lot of that in the game, but it's still my favorite of the bunch. It's so good. Next, honorable mentions, we have Trinity, right? Because I enjoy Infocom games. I just wish that you told me what was going on. Leather Goddesses of Phobos, still good. Just wish you didn't promise what you promised. You know what you did. Metroid, like, the adventure is a tough category. There's a lot of good games here. Starflight, King's Quest 3, Space Quest 1. Like, there were some good adventures this year, but for me, The Legend of Zelda was the best of the bunch. Favorite racing game? There was only one racing game this year. Easy. Outrun. But it's probably also the best racing game that we've played to date. It was really good, but mostly because of technical aspects. Favorite puzzle game? Arkanoid. Honorable mentions, I believe the only other puzzle game that we played, which was Solomon's Key. I like Arkanoid better. I like power-ups. It's a puzzle shooter. It's fun. Next up, favorite platform game. Now, this one's kind of an interesting one, depending on what you consider a platform game. I give it to Castlevania. I considered that one the platform game that I felt was the best. Honorable mentions were Super Mario Bros. The Lost Levels. Like, you just need to fix being mean to me. Wonder Boy, Alex Kidd in Miracle World. And once again, I have a note. If you count Metroid is a hard game to put into a single genre. If you count Metroid as a platform game, then it would win this one as well. I put it as an adventure game, and that was the toughest category this year. So it didn't win, but if you count Metroid as a platform game or as a shooter, Metroid would win that. Favorite RPG? Dragon Quest. Easy. It's near and dear to my heart, but it's also a streamlined RPG. I don't even consider Might and Magic and The Bard's Tale 2 to be honorable mentions. They're no. You're not here. You're not even close to where Dragon Quest is. So the only honorable mention that I have for RPGs is The Legend of Zelda, if you count it. If you count The Legend of Zelda as an RPG, some people do. It definitely stems from the history of RPGs. Is it an RPG itself? Debatable. But if you count it, honorable mention there. Next up, favorite fighting or beat 'em up game. We're going to kind of lump those together. And I'm going to say pro wrestling. I treat it as a fighting game, I think. I think I said that I was going to treat it as a sports game, but I don't know. For me, it's a fighting or a beat 'em up game. The only honorable mention is Renegade for basically starting to launch the beat 'em up genre, but pro wrestling I felt was better than Renegade at this point. Favorite strategy game? Easy. Defender of the Crown. Only one that I would consider good enough to be as like my favorite strategy game. It's mostly because of the graphics, don't get me wrong, but the strategy aspect of the game, it's pretty simple once you figure it out, but that way you can teach it to younger kids. Of just like, you have to figure out where to click here and you just conquer. Defender of the Crown. It's good. I like it. Favorite sports game? There were really only two, if you don't count pro wrestling, and I didn't. But I gave it to Pro Baseball Family Stadium. I had more fun playing that than I did Double Dribble, which is the honorable mention. Maybe it's just because I'm a baseball guy, but it was more fun for me to play kind of this arcadey, cartoony style baseball game as opposed to a more realistic but getting the mechanics wrong basketball game in Double Dribble, especially considering that like I said, if you're going for realistic, you get the mechanics wrong, it really stands out. And I had to hit the button to dribble. Why would I have to do that? Never do that again. All right, favorite arcade game. This is where we're going to start getting into some of the bigger names, stuff that we've already seen. All right, honorable mentions first for arcade games. Arkanoid, Solomon's Key, it's good. Wonder Boy, Renegade, Salamander, and Fantasy Zone. They're all good games, but my favorite arcade game of the year? Outrun. Simple. Sometimes simple is good, even if I don't have anything to say about it too often. It's a good racing game. It's a really good racing game. Outrun. Favorite computer game? This one was a tough one. It was a lot harder for me to figure out than I thought, but then there became a clear front runner for me. Honorable mentions for best or favorite computer game. Not best, my favorite, right? It's got a... Anyway, honorable mentions. Leather Goddesses of Phobos, Trinity, King's Quest 3, Space Quest 1, and Defender of the Crown. All very good computer games. My favorite computer game? No. Starflight. I know that's going to be a surprise, but it really did become like the hidden gem of the year. It was so good. I had so much fun playing it, and I didn't think I was going to. I was a little disappointed that it was as short as it was, considering how big the world was. It was a lot of fun. Favorite console game? This one's a tough one, so I'll just tell you that the winner is The Legend of Zelda. That one was also a very tough one because the honorable mentions are Dragon Quest, Metroid, and Castlevania. Those are some big names. But for me, The Legend of Zelda got things just a bit better overall. It was done and polished just a bit better than the other games. So I ended up having more fun with The Legend of Zelda. I thought going into this I'd have more fun with Dragon Quest, but when I really played them kind of almost back to back, right? Well, I played them at least close to better to the same time. The Legend of Zelda just kind of stood out as a better game for me. Favorite game overall? No surprises. It's The Legend of Zelda again. With, honestly, my honorable mentions for the three runners-up, so to speak, Dragon Quest, Metroid, and Starflight. Very good games. Castlevania just outside that, right? These are all very good games. We had some great highlights this year, but as a year overall, I would say there were a lot of disappointments, right? You know, we played something like 40-something games, and of which, these 5 were really good, but there were a lot of games that just didn't live up to expectations or were disappointing in one way or another. So overall, the year is good. There's promise in the year in 1986 in video games. But for me, it was a lot of disappointments. There was just so many disappointments. So many things that, it's not as good as I anticipated. But there's a lot of promise. And so I'm optimistic about the next year. Speaking of the next year, let's do a little bit of a teaser into what we are doing. I do have everything scripted. I've actually started scripting 1988 as we speak. But 1987 fully scripted. Let's kind of look things over. We have, let's say, several RPGs to play. All of them from Japan. Every last one. I've already looked. I was like, wait, especially after The Bard's Tale 2. I was like, wait, when am I going to do a game like this again? Not in 1987 at all, but there are several RPGs that are going to be coming out that are from Japan, and those go easier for me. I like them more. At least I have in the past. We'll see as we keep going if that changes. But we do have about the same amount of videos as we did in 1986 and 1987. There are several more games that are probably going to take multiple videos. I think it's 1 or 2 more games that I know going in are going to take multiple videos. So I'm going to try to make those videos longer as we go forward so that there's just less of them. And I might be able to, for instance, beat an Infocom adventure game in a single sitting. That might be a thing that happens. Spoilers, Infocom makes another game. There are lots of big names coming out in 1987. There's some sequels, but there's also a lot of new IPs, so to speak. New intellectual properties, including at the end of the year. I will spoil this. at the end of the year, I'm going to be playing 3 of the biggest names of the entire year back to back to back, ending it with 2 RPGs. So there's your little teaser, kind of going into 1987. I'm looking forward to it. I was born in 1986, which means that as soon as I was born, I played every video game that was ever made, and I have memories of all of these, obviously. No. One of the things that has come up quite often in my comments, so it's kind of become an in-joke with me, and only me, I believe, is that certain people believe that if they were not born at the time when the video game first came out and they didn't play it immediately when it came out, their personal history of the game doesn't matter. I don't agree with that, right? I didn't play, for instance, Asteroids or Centipede when they first came out, but I did play them growing up. So I do have memories of those games, and those memories are valid. They're just not what it was like to play it when it first came out. But I still played it, and I can still tell you how I felt about playing it. Yeah? So if you want to add your thoughts to these videos, you can join the Patreon, and I will put a post up at the end of the year, like immediately after the Honorable Mentions Part 4, to let you guys in on that, and we can add it if you guys are interested on seeing things early. The Patreon is there, but there is otherwise no pressure and no incentive right now for you to do it. It really is just people that support me, and I am very grateful for everybody on Patreon, and I'm grateful for everybody that does show up and watches this video all the way through. I know these are long videos. This one is particularly long. I am going to go take an antibiotic and lie down for the rest of the day. But I will get better, and we should have some more videos coming out soon, and hopefully I will see you guys in 1987. That will do it for the story of 1986. My name is ballerscuba. This has been Video Games Over Time. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in 1987.